If you enjoy what we do here, you should definitely check out youtube.com/@MWPNewsGaming. It's our new YouTube channel where we do basically talking like this while also playing video games, old games, older games. We'd like to do new games, but those cost money. So old games, older games, retro games, forgotten games, all kinds of games. While I talk about it, get frustrated, all that kind of cool stuff. We talk about, movies, TV shows, anything like that. youtube.com/@MWPNewsGaming. Please be sure you subscribe. That'll help us out a lot. And if you feel like we're doing a good job, please donate. ko-fi.com/MWPnews. Thank you and enjoy this episode. Good morning and welcome to Beware of 30-minute reviews. I'm Adam, and this is a news/commentary episode. So, where are we? Doctor Who ended its second season as part of the Disney Plus deal this past weekend. And spoilers for people who haven't watched it yet, but were intending to, but, the regeneration. And, this time the Doctor will take on another familiar face. Now he's going to be played by, the Doctor is a non-binary character, but they will be played by, Billie Piper, who you may recall is Rose Tyler from the beginning of the revival. It's also going to be in Wednesday, but she's taking over, and there's also a nice cameo from Jodie Whittaker, which was nice. But the issue is, there's a lot of talk about Doctor Who at this point. There's a lot of questions about, what's happening with this. Because this is the end of the Disney Plus contract. I don't think they've even done a Christmas special on the contract for this year. So, what's going on here? Why, what's going on? And look, let's be real. A lot of this is your standard tabloid bullshit being blown out of proportion. Because, the tabloids weren't the ones who reported that Billie Piper was taking over before it happened. It was, It was, your local, your usual suspects in the geek news space. But I don't want to discount the right-wing tabloids from having a role in what's happened here. Because clearly the ratings are out, and we can see the ratings, and look, the show's doing better than The Flash in Nielsen ratings when The Flash launched, but I don't think that's necessarily an aspirational number, because The Flash was number one on the CW. This is one of BBC's biggest shows. It's got this long tail. I think there is a conversation to be had about what caused this downturn. And I think part of it is, I think they made a mistake in what villains they chose in this. Because, let's just take into consideration what this is. The entire tenure of 14 and 15, David Tennant's second run as the Doctor, and then I don't know how to pronounce his name, so Ncuti Gatwa's entire tenure it's a soft reboot. It's not as, there have been two soft reboots in the last 20 years of Doctor Who. This isn't as soft a reboot, as hard a reboot as the 2005 revival. But it's definitely a soft reboot. I called it when I saw the first episode of it with David Tennant. I was like, oh, this is an on-ramp. This is a way for Disney Plus to feel look, we want to get people into Doctor Who again. We want to get into this business. We want to get people on board and all of that. So what do? We have this, we're going to have this on-ramp. So people who haven't watched the show won't feel entirely left out. which I think is a good idea. I think that's not, like, that is a good way to handle this, especially if you're infusing a bunch of money into it, like, handle it that way. So that's why you get, when Ruby's introduced and she comes into the TARDIS for the first time, you get this whole thing where it's like, everything's explained to her about the Time Lords and about, all of that. And then, like, the other thing was that I liked that they did in the episode with the Toy Maker was kind of this thing where it's like, I think what Bi-Generation was meant to do was, like, physically compartmentalize some of the darker aspects of the Doctor that had taken over the last 20 years. Like, there have been a lot of really, really big, like, things that happened that will weigh on this character, and rightfully should weigh on the character. But I think the idea of Bi-Generation, the way it was, is like, oh, okay, so we're separating that. Like, the version of the Doctor with David Tennant, like, that's still kicking around over with Donna, that's the one that's got to carry the weight of everything that's happened. This is a fresh, we can do a lot differently. And I think that he did a great job of walking that line, where he's got this thing in the back of his head of, like, this weight and this gravitas, and he's got this, this authority to him, but he still is softer. He's not as intense. And I think that he did, like, his run is probably his take on the character is probably my favorite of the revival. I haven't seen much of Jodie Whittaker, though. But his, he brings the intensity when needed, but most of the time he's kind of just softer about it. And I think that he, like, that wasn't the issue. The issue that I think, and I think that maybe I'm just being naive, if we're soft rebooting and you're bringing in this franchise that is decades old, like, and we're talking, like, over 60 years old at this point, because it launched in, 63? So we're a 62-year-old franchise. So, what do you do if you're trying to get people on board? I think the mistake they made was not playing with the more iconic villains. And, like, look, I get that Russell T Davies is a huge, huge fan of the show. I get that Russell T Davies is a huge, huge fan of of the original run of the show and all of that, and that shows. But at the same time, this is a TV show that is disparate in how you have to watch it if you want to catch up on things. If you wanted to understand fully what was going on in the season 1 finale with Sutek, you needed to have BritBox. Because the only way to watch the Pyramids of Mars is through BritBox. Because that's where all of the not lost episodes of classic Doctor Who are. And you have to go back and watch this 4-part episode from, 1974? Like, and then, okay, well, now I know who this character is. And, okay, well, we'll say that that's not the, like, well, let's take a step back, He's not, Tom Baker's one of the more iconic people to have, to have played the role. Tom Baker's one of the people who has, who's probably the most famous of the classic Doctor Who doctors. Like, so what about the new season, where it turns out that Mrs. Flood is the Rani? Like, cool, but it's not even, like, this was the 6th Doctor this is the bad guy for? Like, Colin Baker, was that his name? The 6th Doctor? Like, and we haven't seen them since 1984. Like, here's the thing. What this show should have been, realistically, if you're going to do this stuff, like, look back at, at what the first season of the revival of the show was in 2005. Like, one of the best episodes of that season, and the finale, is just the Daleks are here. Because you recognize them. Even if you've never watched an episode of Doctor Who before, you've probably seen a Dalek somewhere in your life. In pop culture, in another TV show, it's a reference somewhere. You've probably seen it in a store because they sell toys of them. Like, it's an iconic science fiction bad guy. Like, and it's not. That's not a overstatement. I would say if you were to look at, like, what are the most, iconic science fiction robots? I know it's not a robot, there's a thing inside it, but, like, the most iconic one, it's in the top 5. It's up there with, like, R2-D2 and, like, C-3PO and these other robots. Like, the idea that, like, we're not going to use them at all in the first 2 seasons of the revival is just kind of bizarre. It's just kind of a little bizarre. I don't understand why that was the decision they went with. But it's one of those things where, like, if you're trying to bring people in, I liked what they did with the Pantheon. The Pantheon's a really cool idea. But, like, you have that, you have the Rani, you have the Omega, which, like, you were concerned that people didn't like the Timeless Child, so you just kind of ignore that, but you bring in this, which is one of those things that, like, the Timeless Child kind of retconned. And, like, again, last time we saw this was a crossover during the 3rd Doctor's reign. Like, it's a very strange situation to put yourself in willingly. Like, I don't understand why this was the thought process they went to. Like, I get this idea that you want to, you want to pay homage to the classic and all of that, but, like, no Daleks, no Cybermen, no Weeping Angels. Like, that's the easiest win on the planet, the Weeping Angels. So that's, like, the Weeping Angels are great horror bad guys, because, like, it is they don't kill you, they just send you back in time, and you're just kind of fucked. Like, it's a great horror bad guy for what this is, but there's none of them. Like, there is one recurrence that I can think of back to the revival of Doctor Who, and that would be them returning to midnight. And the thing behind, like, that's the only thing I could think of that's like a return to that era. And I think that was a massive mistake. That was because the thing is, it's like, look, I think that, especially when you have this partnership with HBO Max, because that's the thing too, is that it's like, if you're Disney, now granted, let's be fair, when this contract started, they did not have when this deal started to co-produce Doctor Who, Disney Plus and Max did not have this deal to not co-distribute, but, like, to, like, bundle together. Like, but the thing is, it's like, this is the perfect opportunity to use that. Like, oh, you want to get more of this? Go back to this season here. And I think the other mistake was not letting Ruby stay on for a second season. I love Belinda, and I think she did a great job this season. And I really loved her idea of being the companion who's unwillingly there, but is like, okay, well, the best way to get through this very strange and very dangerous situation is kind of just go along with it. So let's do that. Like, it's kind of a weird situation that they don't really, like, you spent the season with this character who I think part of the issue, like that's the thing when we talk about what went on with this. I think that, like, it's not like I think Ruby was part of the problem because it took me a while to warm up to her. In the beginning, I found her very annoying. I found her very, like, bleh. Like, but by the time you get to 74 yards, okay, we've caught on. And then they write her off the show, and rather than having her be kind of like what Clara was in the last season of Matt Smith, like, or not the last season of Matt Smith, in Peter Capaldi, where it's like, yeah, I've resolved my character arc, but I'm still going to travel with you. Like, we still resolved the mystery around me, but I'm still going to travel with you. I'm just going to live at home, and then when there's an adventure, I'll go with you, and we can go fuck around in time and space. Like, that's a cool idea. Like, it's a really cool idea, but, like, that's not what happens here. She's just working with Unit, and then we don't see her until we get one episode with her, and it's like, and then we don't get the Doctor in that episode really at all, except for the very end. And it's just, what are we doing here? Was kind of the question that I found myself asking a lot of the time. And I don't mean from a perspective of like all of that, because it's like, I saw people saying it's like, oh, this is because it went too woke, and I'm like, look, with all due respect, I got into Doctor Who originally in 2012, 2013. And one of the things that helped kind of onboard me was Tumblr. And I don't think there's a more woke environment than mid-2010s Tumblr. And I think that a good amount of the American audience for that show was carried by that, so you can't blame it on that. That there's going to be a question of like, okay, so Doctor Who is on BBC, and then it's like, okay, so like, how much are these ratings impacted by the fact that it's also on Disney Plus, and you can watch it on Disney Plus? I don't know that answer, and I think we'll get an answer when Disney Plus either opts to continue the contract or not. Because again, we talked about this a lot with the Arrowverse, where it's this idea of like, how much do terrestrial TV ratings really matter in 2025, or at the time, like 2017? And I think that's a question that remains true to this day. How much do the terrestrial ratings matter in an era where so many people are watching these shows streaming? And in the past, Doctor Who was not something that was easy to stream. When I wanted to watch Jodie Whittaker's last episode, which we talked about on Beware of Spoilers, The Power of the Doctor, I think it was called, I had to get a trial subscription to AMC Plus because AMC Plus had bundled into it, BBC America. And that was how you could watch it. If you didn't have that, you couldn't stream it. You had to watch it on BBC America. If you didn't have BBC America, well, sucks to suck. And therein kind of lies the big, question here. Like, the first season, people were just getting back into it. And I think, too, it's like, I talked about it before, why did they do the specials in such a weird way on Disney Plus? Like, why do you not bundle them together? It was like they did the same thing with I Am Groot, where it's like they put up 5 I Am Groot shorts next to each other. Like, they put up the 5 shorts for I Am Groot, like, all in the same space. And it's like, why would you do that? Like instead of just bundle it all together. Like, that way it's like you can just watch it in a playlist. Like, because who's just sit here and go, okay, well, I watched this one, and I go and find the other, and besides me, because I did it for review purposes, but, like, it was just kind of a weird choice. It's kind of the same thing here, where it's like they put up all the specials. There were 5 specials that they did for Disney Plus. The 3 with David Tennant, the Christmas special that introduced Ruby and his first, post-regeneration adventure, and then the Christmas special last year, Joy to the World, with Nicola Coughlan, which was, but that whole thing is kind of an issue. And we're not going to get an answer about whether or not Disney Plus this is a lucrative endeavor for Disney Plus. I think that, and the other thing we're taking into consideration is the comments by Tony Gilroy, which we will address on Exploring Hyperspace Lanes later today, or probably around the same time. Actually, I'll probably put this on my lunch break. But Tony Gilroy said that the entire budget for Andor was $650 million because Disney believed streaming to be dead. and they were fighting tooth and nail for the budget for season 2 because Disney believed streaming dead. And that makes a lot of sense when we take into consideration some of the other things we're seeing with Disney Plus, and also the report related to The Mandalorian that we'll talk about again on Exploring Hyperspace Lanes later today. So the question is, like, if Disney Plus sees streaming as dead, like, how good could the ratings possibly be for Doctor Who? And, like, how good would they have to be for them to see value in this contract? And again, what's the value in this contract if you don't also have the back catalog? That's the other mistake in all of this. Oh, fuck me. These fucking trains. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of mistakes that went into this revival of Doctor Who. I think that there were a lot of weird choices that happened in this revival. And I think those things all contributed to having this great opportunity and squandering it to bring in new people onto it. Because, like, if that's the thing, is that, like, if you're trying to prove to someone that, like, hey, you should watch Doctor Who, then I don't necessarily think that this first batch of episodes really did that. Because if you look back, like, there were some really cool things they introduced. Like, they introduced, what's his name? They introduced Jonathan Groff as kind of a new Jack Harkness character. Like, and then he never showed up again. Well, that's such a cool idea, and they just don't do anything with it. Like, some of the one-off bad guys this season are just kind of, like, it's such a weird... There are so many weird little decisions that went into this show that I'm kind of just like... I don't know why you didn't go with things that people already knew. Like that's the thing, is that's like when they made a big deal at the 50th anniversary for bringing back the Trigons, and they weren't really in the episode that much. That wasn't the most important thing that happened in that episode. But the Trigons were brought in there, and it's like, oh yeah, they're bringing back the classic Doctor Who villain. Cool, but like, okay, like at that point you're like 7 seasons into this revival, so you can have that moment of like, okay, we're bringing in something that people, older fans may know, like. And look, I'm not saying that and that was, I think, the other big issue is that they put all this money into it, Disney Plus, and it was kind of like, we're going to do Doctor Who on a bigger budget. It's like, oh, awesome, Doctor Who with money, it's going to look better. And then it just kind of didn't. Like, it still had that same look that, like, early Doctor Who did, where it's like, we're using CGI, but, like, budget CGI. Like, it's not, we don't have the money to do everything we really want to. And look, don't get me wrong, there were things that looked really great, like, Lux looked really great, and there were some things that looked good. But early on, and I think this was the issue that I think would have turned off a lot of people who would have otherwise watched, very early on, the CGI did not look great. Very early on in this new, in this season. With, like, I'm thinking, like, when the Doctor and Donna land in the tree with Newton. Like, I'm thinking about that. It's like, that looked terrible. The entire episode, Wild Blue Yonder, which is a great episode. I love the way they play with the science fiction tropes and all of that. It's a really great self-contained science fiction episode. That episode is cool, but it just looked weird, which would have turned people off. And I think that that's kind of where this mistake, like, these were the mistakes that went into it from the beginning. And it's like, they needed to, I think, dig into what it was that got people involved and what would have made them fall off. Like, I think they moved too quick on this revival to just be like, okay, let's just continue and we'll do a soft reboot and all of that, But I think what needed to happen was there needed to be a conversation. Like, what was it that got people in? What was it that made people fall out? And I think the issue was, what got people in was, these self-contained stories. Look at Eccleston's run. Eccleston's run is characterized by these these self-contained episodes. There are a few episodes where it's like, multi-episode arcs, like the one with the kid with the gas mask and the nanobots that try to cure him. Like, that whole episode is great. Is that the one, Justice Once Everyone Lives? Like, great episode. The episode with what's it called? The episode with the Slovene, not as good, but also a 2-part episode. But beyond that, it's like everything's kind of self-contained. I think they go back to the Slovene once. Or was that in season 2? Either way, the point is, like, this whole thing, like, doing this grand story felt very Moffat. And I know with me, that made me fall off. And I feel like that may have had a lot of other people, fall off too, where it's like, we're getting too grand. Keep it self-contained. And that's kind of what I think what the big mistake was. But we'll wrap up there for today. Next week we'll be talking about something else, depending on what happens. But until then, have a great rest of your week.